Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show that brings you football all the time, all aspects of that sport inside and out. Just giving you guys a heads up today. There is just me today. It's going to be a weird day. Honestly, God, I feel like I'm going to be talking to myself all day. I'm not used to stuff like this, so I'm just giving you guys that heads up. I do have a few things to go over today. We're going to go over the NFC North, some power rankings, and I'm going to go over a few guys who, depending on your team, might be a sleeper in your Dynasty draft. Few things that I think we should get out of the way and talk about those dynasty things. I also wanted to give you guys a heads up. I don't think Zeke Elliott's signing in Tampa Bay. Just to be honest with you, there was a signing there that, when we get to it a little bit later, might be a sleeper in your dynasty draft. That being said, I think we're going to do what we can, and we're going to move into this show, and we're going to talk to you guys a little about the NFC North, and I don't want to waste up too much time, and we're going to get right into it. So, my rankings, you guys kind of saw it on the intro right here. I do have them ranked 1 through 4 at the top. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these rankings backwards. And I'm going to give you the explanation of why I have these rankings where I have these rankings. For all you guys that are in the chat, if you are in the chat, I can't really respond right back. But if you guys do want to say anything, I will respond vocally because it's just me and you guys in the chat today for all you guys are out there. So if you are out there and you are seeing this, please let me know. And I guess give me a heads up. Just to give you another heads up out there, because I will tell you, everybody's not here. They need a little bit of breather. It is a lot to do this work, and we got a lot that we're putting out there. And I know these guys are going through, it's hard to balance life, work, new families, pets, and also a podcast. So that being said, I will credit for everything these guys have done from the beginning to the end of this podcast. I know it's overwhelming. There's not any money coming in, and that's okay. I just want everybody to understand that that's where we're at today. I will be bringing you information. I am not going to stop doing this. We missed out on last Saturday, mainly because it was just an exhausting week. And to be honest, we got a lot of work done around our houses and everything. Started the season, but I will tell you, football never ends here in this house. So, and actually everybody around here, it pretty much doesn't end. So just giving you guys that heads up. Let's jump into it today. Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate the support. Hopefully other people will pop in and talk. Outside of that, I'm going to jump into it today with the NFC North. We're going to talk about the Packers. I'm going to get into that offense because, to be honest with you, that offense is kind of a slight bright side of that team. But we don't know what's going to happen because it all hinges on the quarterback. Obviously, Jordan Love behind the same line. Nothing really changed on that offensive line. They ranked 11th overall, 6th best for pressures against quarterbacks, which is really good considering they had Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he gets rid of the ball fairly quick, but he has a habit sometimes holding the ball and looking for that one receiver to get open, which is why I think Rodgers had one of his down years. Obviously, I think it was his worst year ever last year. But they did a great thing in Green Bay. What they did was they said, screw it. We got Jordan Love. He's not Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think anybody is going to compare him to Aaron Rodgers unless you're a Green Bay fan. You're just hoping for the best. What I think is going to happen is Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, side by side. Obviously, they're going to be good receivers on that team. They're not going to stand out, I don't think, too much. Romeo Doubs needs to take a huge step forward for that offense to get any better. But they added 3 rookies to the roster in receivers, and Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and Grant Dubois. I don't know where these guys are going to fit in this offense. I know that Dontavian Wicks is going to be a good addition. Could be a fairly decent route running receiver with good PPR ability. He's kind of a completion kind of guy. So that being said, I also think that they added 2 tight ends that a lot of people were pissed off about them drafting 2 tight ends this high. They drafted Lou Musgrave in the 2nd, Tucker Kraft in the 3rd. I think this all makes sense because I don't think they're 100% sold on Jordan Love. I think they're going to do the best they can to make sure that Jordan Love has as many weapons. I'm not going to say quality. I'm not going to say quantity. I'm going to say quality. No, I said that backwards again. Quantity over quality here. I think they think a lot of above average players will help Jordan Love take a step forward. That's what I think they are doing in Green Bay. So that's kind of why I have them stuck in this position. And obviously this offense, everything hinges on what Jordan Love does behind that line. They didn't change their running backs. You still have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I still think that actually might be how they run their offense. It's not going to change too much when it comes to those running backs. I think those running backs are still going to perform like they did last year. I think the two of them together had almost 2,000 yards, which is really good for running backs. The defense for this team, which is kind of a reason why I still also have them this low on the list. As always, the Packers, their main focus is defense. They hit that in the first round. They drafted Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa, and they maintain that focus, targeting value in later rounds. Colby Wood in defensive end, not a bad guy. It's going to be a nice depth piece and an addition. They also added Carl Brooks later, and I think Carl Brooks is going to be a huge step forward for this defense. But to be honest, this defense wasn't that bad. I just think they need a better offense. And like I said, this entire team hinges on what happens with Jordan Love. They addressed signings in their secondary with Darnell Savage, moving to the back of that defense. I think Darnell Savage, older guy, good cover corner. I think he's going to be good if they play zone. We'll see what happens just because of his age. He's a little bit on the older side. Also, the middle-of-the-road defense currently lacks press coverage, the ability to pressure the passer. But adding these pieces in the draft, it all depends on how the cheese farmers raise their talent. I just see them swapping with the Bears from being the worst team, to be honest with you guys, in the North. And I know there's a lot of Green Bay fans that are on this show. There's a lot of Green Bay fans that have watched this show. I have Green Bay fans that are family. I know they have high hopes for this team, but I think they're realists when it comes to a quarterback can make your team, hence the reason why quarterbacks get drafted in the top 10 all the time. So there's not much more I can say about Green Bay. I will say that I'll move on to that third place team for me, which is the Bears. And I don't know if Bo's going to watch this show, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to like what I have to say about the Bears. I have them in third in this division. They revamped, and all of their offense, it's not much to say here. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful pieces on paper. Justin Fields, franchise quarterback, hosting 3 wide receivers, and DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, now running the ball with probably a 3-headed monster. One of the guys that I think I'll talk about a little bit later. And also you have Deontay Foreman, the starting back, Khalil Herbert as a change of pace guy, and then the 6-foot athletic monster, who I was going to tell you to talk about a little bit later, is Roschon Johnson, and we will get into him a little bit later because we're going to talk about some of those key pieces in Dynasty that you might want to look at later in the draft. Roschon Johnson is probably going to be the red zone threat in their chain mover. He's just a big, stout guy. He reminds me of Latavius Murray. If you need him to move the chains, that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to be a big, huge running back, quick on his feet, downhill runner. They also still have their tight end in Cole Kmet, hoping he takes a step forward this year. And they didn't really target him last year. Justin Fields ran the ball. They stopped throwing the ball mid-season when I think it was just, that was it. That offensive line sucked. And that's what they did. But I will say they took a huge leap in the offensive line. We already talked about this early in the year, where they just went out and just scooped up every offensive lineman they could. So I think that's the reason why this offense will take a huge step forward. But to be honest with you, I always tell this to people, no matter how excited you get about your team, when you look at your team and they're phenomenal on paper, don't get your hopes up, because just be a realist and understand that paper means nothing. Coming from a Cleveland fan, I've seen great teams on paper, and it just never seems to transcend to the actual league. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that one. But moving on to their defense, one of the worst defenses last season, after trading away 2 of their stud pass rushers, they gave up one of the best quarterbacks average to a QBR's average to QBs. I believe it was 94.4 to opposing quarterbacks. That's giving teams the ability to just go haywire on you on the offense. Every quarterback played good against you, essentially. They added some nice pieces so far in the offseason, but not enough to make up for what they lost defensively. This will probably be a bottom 10 defense in pass rush and run defense. So to be honest, that's going to be like a bottom 10 overall defense. So if I were you and you're playing any type of fantasy, this is a team you should just leave out there on waiver wires for defenses. If you have them on your team, let them go. They're going to be bad. They're going to be bad. I think they were 29th overall last year. They might be 32nd overall this year. That's one of the reasons why I don't see this team taking that much of a step forward unless they capitalize with that offense and they control the clock. That's the only way I can see them doing anything to try to get in front of the 2 teams in front of them. Next team in front of them, Detroit Lions, guys. This was a team that I know that all of us were hyped up on last year because they almost made it to the playoffs. This team, I think they were ridiculous. It was a high-flying offense. I mean, I think Jared Goff had one of the best years of his career. I don't know what else to say about this team last year outside of it's just overperformed, and it was underwhelming at the end of the year when they didn't make it to the playoffs. The offense is having one of the best high-flying offenses last season. I see the Lions taking a step back, mainly because of the punishment handed down by the NFL for a lot of these players with the gambling BS. It was supposed to be a huge step forward, and then Jameson Williams and a few other guys were just kicked off the team for a minimum of 6 games, some plus. So I think this is going to really affect this team. The offense performed, I think they'll perform okay for the first 6 games of the year. They need to take a huge step forward, but I do understand that they did add, and this is for all you people out there that maybe are Jameson Williams owners or maybe Amon-Ra owners and stuff like that. And Amon-Ra is still playing, but Marvin Jones and Josh Palmer got signed to this team to be guys that are going to fill roster spots. Well, now they're going to have to play, and I think Marvin Jones could be a good week 1 through 6 kind of starter if you're looking at some Dynasty, and he's probably sitting out there on waivers right now because he's a guy that can plug and play, and he played on this offense before. Different coaching, but he's played in Detroit before, so he knows what it takes to play up there. So those guys will help the pains of that passing game. They also had the addition in the draft, 12th overall pick in Jahmyr Gibbs. This should help their run game immensely, but I will say they got rid of Swift. They got rid of Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams came off a record-breaking 17-touchdown season, and DeAndre Swift also had a good year on top of that. I think the two of them combined for a little over 1,500 yards, and they're no longer with the team. So Jahmyr Gibbs has some huge shoes to fill coming into this team and not losing ground at all. And I think the team expects him to get all 1,500 yards himself. And he's capable. I think he's capable. It just depends on what the opportunities are and how the offensive line is. And to be honest, the O-line was a top 10 O-line last year. So I think Jared Goff, being a guy that's made it to the Super Bowl before, is capable of doing it again. So that's why I like the Detroit Lions here too. I don't have much to say about this offense outside of that. I will say they also added Laporta. Yeah, they added Sam Laporta too. So I think that also, for all you guys looking for a tight end, he has the highest upside because he's filling a role of TJ Hawk. Brock Wright, I thought Brock Wright was the guy, but it looks like they have a lot of faith in Sam Laporta by drafting him where they did. So I think Sam Laporta is supposed to fill a role of what TJ Hawkinson was doing. So for all you guys out there in Dynasty, I mean, if you don't take Sam Laporta in the second, you're crazy. Like, I would take him at 2-1, to be honest. But it depends on who's there. But, I mean, if he's the last tight end on the board, I hands down would take him. They have him going as tight end 3. I can see his tight end production being like a tight end 1 in Dynasty. I can see him doing better than Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer just because of the opportunity there. It's a lot there, especially with the start of the season with them missing players. Moving on to their defense, one of the bright sides of this team, vast improvement in the secondary. They added a steal in the draft in Brian Branch, who play style has been comped to Minkah Fitzpatrick out of the Steelers. They also signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cameron Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley, making the secondary probably one of the most formidable in the NFC. I think a lot of people will see that this secondary is going to take a huge step up. They allowed a lot of passing yards last year, and I think from that, I think they saw what they needed to fix, and they're going to fix it. And, I think they did fix it just in the free agency signings. Making the secondary a stout secondary. If the coaching's as good as it should be, which he's always been a decent defensive coach, I think it'll do what it needs to do. Another addition in the first round, they got Jack Campbell. Everybody knows I like Jack Campbell. If you watched the draft show, if you didn't, go back and watch it. Dude, I was ecstatic for Jack Campbell when he went. He went so late, huge steal in the draft. Guy could be one of the best linebackers coming into this league. Tackling monster, great vision. It added up, which, to be honest, added to the defensive line because obviously him being a linebacker, he mostly plays inside linebacker, but he has the ability to kind of move on the outside and get to the edge sometimes. They also, don't forget, they have a defensive player who was competing for the defensive rookie MVP last year in Aiden Hutchinson. He had 9 sacks last year, along with James Houston, who they drafted, I want to say, in the 6th or 7th round, had 5 sacks last year. So this team did everything it could on that defense to take one huge leap forward. And then they also took Broderick Martin, who's another guy that could help on that defensive line. So this team is just all over the place in like just tackling. I wouldn't be shocked if this defense is a top 10 defense next year. I really wouldn't be shocked. Just giving you guys that heads up. So they're probably on your waiver while you're in fantasy. You could probably go get them, and it'd be a sneaky get. Don't forget, they're playing Jordan Love twice a year. They're playing the Chicago Bears twice a year. And then they're playing the Minnesota Vikings twice a year. Now, the Minnesota Vikings could be a struggle because, to be honest, this is my first place team in this division. I see Minnesota taking that first place seed, which is actually weird because if I remember correctly, I think Minnesota was first last year. I think Green Bay was second, so I have them going from 2 to 4. I think the Lions were third and the Bears were fourth. So I have this whole division flopping around, and a lot of this has to do with the offseason moves, the quarterback changes, and what happened in the draft. But moving into Minnesota, obviously the most shining point of this Vikings is their offense. You have Kirk Cousins putting the ball in the hands of one of the most prolific wide receivers in recent football history. Obviously, his name is JJ the Jet Plane. He has over 4,800 yards in his first 3 seasons in the league, was showing no sign of slowing down. I mean, I think his first year was 1,400. I think his second year was 1,600. His third year was over 1,800 yards. So the guy has just not stopped. Then they go and add an additional receiver who could be just as prolific as Thielen in his prime. And to be honest, in Jordan Addison. This is another guy that is going to be a stud, and they drafted him high. Let's not forget about TJ Hawkinson, who they traded for, who's got another year on his deal. You still have Dalvin Cook. Everywhere I turn on this team, I just see a playmaker everywhere you look. So I just don't see any way for this offense to take a step back. And they still have KJ Osborne as their 3. So I think they still have they did draft a running back in the late rounds. Let me give you that information really quick, because that could be, with injuries on that team, he could have an opportunity to play, because this does happen all the time with the Minnesota Vikings. DeWayne McBride, who I know we like DeWayne McBride when we were talking about everything that was going on in the offseason. DeWayne McBride, I think, might have been ranked. I don't have the big board over here, but I think he might have been ranked somewhere in our top 15 of running backs. So I think he's capable. I don't think he's going to start day one, obviously, because you have Dalvin Cook there, but I think he's capable. Also, don't forget, they added Mekhi Blackman. That's getting into the defense. See, I'm already getting ahead of myself. Typical me. Now to the defense, because this was the worst side of this team, and this is the reason they almost lost every game last year. I mean, they gave up a 92.4 QBR to opposing quarterbacks. And if I remember correctly, 11 of their wins in 2022, they were losing within the final 4 minutes of the game, and they came back to win. This is largely the inability due to quarterback pressure. They addressed this slightly by adding Dean Lowry, Sheldon Day. They also had Late Pick and Jacqueline Roy. All these guys can help this defensive line get to the passer. But I will say Jacqueline Roy is raw, and he's probably, I would be shocked if he started day one. He was a 5th-round draft pick, so I don't know how much they expect out of him. I don't know if he's a flyer pick, if they expect him to start. They only had, looks like, 6 picks in this draft, so they had to capitalize on every pick that they took. They also added two cornerbacks in Mekhi Blackman and C.J. Colden. Obviously, Mekhi Blackman, they drafted in the 3rd round. I think they expect him to come in and start day one, to be honest, which is kind of scary, which to me proves that this defense is going to struggle a little bit. And then I'm trying to think who they touched at safety. Oh, Jay Ward, they drafted at safety in the 4th round. I don't remember if they signed a safety in the offseason. Actually, it's kind of escaping me. But I don't know if it moves the needle at all for this defense. But I will tell you, what does move this defense's needle to being a top defense is the defensive coordinator and Brian Flores. I saw him do this in Miami when they traded away everybody, and Brian Flores just took all of those players and bumped that Miami defense. I think it was a top defense that year, and most people couldn't name a lot of those guys in the secondary. So I think this right here could take that defense to being a top 15 defense. And if they're capable of doing that, this team wins this division all day. And that's actually why I see the team winning the division, is because I do have Brian Flores moving the needle that much and making them a top contender in the NFC North and even in the NFC alone. And they were last year, and I think they will continue to be this year. So this team is going to take huge leaps and bounds forward. Now, out of all those players on those teams, right, because what I told you I was going to talk a little bit about today was the sleepers in this draft for your dynasty teams. And I know everybody's like, oh, well, we know who's going. We know the starters. You know it's going to be Bijan. You know it's going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba. You know it's going to be Jordan Addison. You know it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, I'm not talking about, the top 5-6 guys. I don't care about them. I care about the guys who are looking for flyers in this draft. Everybody out there in my league is actually harassing me because I'm going out there and I'm getting third-round picks. I'm not going to tell you who I'm targeting in the third round. All I'm going to tell you is there's a lot of guys that are going to go UDFA and probably will go mid to late third round that, to be honest with you, with the opportunity there, they could be starters this season. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this. I know I've only been talking for about 20 minutes, but I'm going to go through this team by team and have a conversation with you guys, because I think what a lot of people forget is that some of these teams did take picks on these guys a little earlier than they should have. And this is not a huge receiver draft. This was a huge running back, tight end draft. So if you are hurting in those positions, this is the draft where you can take flyers in and have high upside for years to come, because we all know when it comes to running backs, the league does not want to pay them anymore. So there's going to be a rotating door for all these running backs coming in and out and in and out and in and out. So I'm going to do this like we did last Wednesday. I'm going to go through the teams, just alphabetical order. I was going to go by division, but it's a little hard to do that sometimes. I just had the draft right in front of me. So I'm going to go alphabetical order. I'm going to go through the Arizona Cardinals, to be honest with you. First thing I see at the Arizona Cardinals, and Ryan might be mad at me, this guy's not going drafted in some leagues. He's getting drafted middle of the third in other leagues, is Mike Wilson. Michael Wilson out of Stanford. This kid has the ability to do what Michael Floyd did on this team. I think it's Michael Floyd, right? I think it's Michael Floyd. I can't remember now. Michael Floyd, I think, was the kid when Larry Fitzgerald was there, and then Christian Kirk came, and then Michael Floyd, I think, lost his job, went to another team, and didn't start. But I think the opportunity is here with Michael Wilson on this team that he could be a solid day 2, solid wide receiver 2, day 1, because this team did draft him high. I mean, granted, you still have DeAndre Hopkins there. I want to say you have a couple other players there. Now I'm escaping my mind. Let me go to Sleeper real quick and just take a look at the players and see what we have. DeAndre Hopkins, 22 season stats. Wide receiver. Why can't I? See, this is why I don't like looking up stuff live, because I can never find anybody. So this team, you had DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, which obviously they traded Marquise Brown and Rondale Moore. But I think Rondale Moore, I didn't know they signed Zach Pascal. I think Rondale Moore could have a position where he loses his job. I like his production, but for some odd reason, I don't know why you'd go out and get a receiver in the third round if you didn't think that he has the potential of making a roster spot. And I think Rondale Moore, they are built a little bit different. Michael Wilson's 6'2", 213, so he's a big guy. Whereas I'm looking at D-Hop, sorry. I think Rondale Moore's a lot smaller. Yeah, 5'7", 180. So, I mean, that could be an issue right there for them. I just think what they did is they had depth. And I think Michael Wilson is a guy you can go out and get in UDFA, especially if you have a taxi squad and you can sit on him for a year. This is a guy I would look at. And he, like I said, even going in the third round. Outside of that, I don't think they added anything else in Arizona that I would touch on. I wouldn't touch Clayton Tune, to be honest, because as a quarterback, he's probably going to be deep buried on the depth chart. So I don't think I'd touch him. Moving into Atlanta, obviously Bijan's going. We already know this. There's nobody else on this team or on this defense that's going to change the needle, or on this offense going to change the needle. I will tell you I don't do IDP, so if you guys want me to cover defensive players, I could try to do it, but I'm not going to do it right now. You're moving into Baltimore. Zay Flowers, guy that's going to go in the first round of most Dynasty drafts. Target shares day one. I see him possibly getting 100 targets on this offense. He's probably going to go into this offense being the number one, maybe number two, depending on what Odell's potential is at this point. Everything else is going to count on Odell being healthy and how much they want to utilize him, where they want to utilize Odell in this offense. They didn't take anybody else. Baltimore, Buffalo, Dalton Kincaid is a guy I told you he's probably going to be one of the first tight ends off the board. And then you move into Justin Shorter out of Florida. That's a guy that's going to be buried on a depth chart. I'll tell you right now, he has the ability to make the roster, probably will make the roster because they got rid of Isaiah McKenzie. And I think you might see some potential there later in the season, but he's a UDFA guy. If you can bury him on a taxi squad, go for it. I honestly wouldn't take a risk on this guy. And then moving into Carolina, most of their stuff happened in the offseason. Most people are going to take Bryce Young just because he's a day one starter. They draft him in the first round. They're going to start him day one. Anybody that says they're not going to start him day one, which I saw some rumors in the offseason that they're probably not going to start Bryce Young, I think are crazy. They gave up way too much to not start this guy. San Francisco did it, and it's biting them in the ass because they don't even know what they got in a guy right now. And a lot of that's based on injury. And then same with Jordan Love. Green Bay drafted Jordan Love in the first round. They still don't even know what they have in him right now. So it's going to be crazy. You got to start Bryce Young. You got to see what you have in him. If you suck for the first year, hopefully the coaching gets better. Hopefully he gets better and adjusts, and he gets better in the second year. So obviously he's going to get drafted in the first, second round, depending on the format of your league. If it's a super flex league, you're probably going to get drafted in the first round. If it's just a PPR league, he's probably going to get drafted mid-second. They didn't draft anybody else. Oh, yeah, Jonathan Mingo. That's a guy that's probably going to jump on the roster day one. If you draft Jonathan Mingo, it's probably going to be mid to late second. I don't know where else I would touch him. Honestly, I'm not that big of a fan of Jonathan Mingo, but he does have opportunities day one. So you got to touch him just for the target share. Chicago, I told you Chicago is beautiful on paper, but they've got to put it all together. Roschon Johnson was the guy I was telling you earlier. This guy I love his potential. Everybody in Chicago seems to get hurt at this running back position. I mean, they have Khalil Herbert, and they have, who's the other kid that they have? Why is nothing? I think my touchscreen's broken fully. Well, that's not appreciated. What did I say? They got, Deontay Foreman, who they got in the offseason, which Deontay Foreman actually is going to probably be a decent starter. But like I said, they're going to probably go with a three-headed monster there. If you're looking at Roschon, it's going to be you're looking for touchdowns with this guy. He's going to probably get like maybe 10 snaps a game. And you're looking like probably 18% to 22% to start the season with snap percentage. Because like I said, they're probably going to go 33, 33, 33. Roschon's going to get a little, then he's going to slowly grow. Because this guy has such potential. And the problem is Bijan Robinson was on that same team. And Roschon came in to block. So, like Bijan, a lot of people aren't going to understand, Bijan is not that blocker like Roschon was. So, Roschon has the potential to block, run, and he's a big body guy that can get in the end zone. I just, not knocking Bijan, I just think when you're looking at Roschon, he's a guy that was originally going in thirds. He's now moved his way up to mid-seconds, and I've seen stupid mocks where they have him in the first, which that's crazy to me, but there is a lot of potential there. They also drafted Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati. This says a lot because they need Darnell Mooney to step up, and I think Tyler Scott, what he does is he puts a fire up Darnell Mooney's ass to step up because they have DJ Moore, they have Chase Claypool, they have Darnell Mooney, and I think Tyler Scott is going to be a guy that's going to be fighting for a roster spot day one. And honestly, I don't know if he's getting drafted in some mocks. I haven't seen it. If he is, he's a guy you can take in the late third. He's a guy I would stash on my taxi squad if you have that ability. Getting to one of my favorite teams in the draft. A lot of people think I'm crazy, but But when you talk about a team that's throwing the ball 650 times a season, there's so much opportunity when it comes to fantasy and points per value. These guys are going to get touches. It's just a matter of when. So for me, the Cincinnati Bengals drafted Charlie Jones in the 4th, Andre Iosivas in the 6th, and they also drafted Chase Brown in the 5th. So what that tells me is Chris Evans is going to struggle. He's going to have to compete with Chase Brown, and I think Chase Brown's going to battle and possibly win out that second position on that team. Charlie Jones is a guy I have comped Julian Edelman. I think he can take a lot of balls underneath. That didn't sound good. I think he can take a lot of balls underneath and across the middle, and he plays very well in coverage. So this is a guy that's he plays kind of like a possession coverage receiver. So like I love everything about this kid, and he's not even going drafted. A lot of people have Andre Iosivas, who I believe is the Tyler Boyd replacement when Tyler Boyd doesn't sign next year. So Iosivas, I think, will probably be buried a little bit on that depth chart, but he has the ability to come in and play. So actually, a lot of people have Andre Iosivas going late 3rd and just falling out of the 3rd round. So now, obviously, we're going to move into the Cleveland Browns. Let's go in alphabetical order. So Cedric Tillman, they drafted a wide receiver. He's probably going to start, but he's still going to be kind of buried on this depth chart. They traded the 2nd for Elijah Moore. You still have Amari Cooper. You still have David Njoku. So like they've got some big targets there. But I do see the team leaning more on a pass offense. So they're probably going to throw the ball probably close to about 500 times this year. And I see Tillman having the opportunity of 60. That's what I see Tillman's opportunity being. Now, if he goes off in week 1 through 4, high upside. Tillman has the ability to probably get 100 targets here if this year, if that's the case. So that being said, I think Tillman's going mid-seconds in most dynasties, and I think that's a great value for him. If you want to take Cedric Tillman in the mid-second, late second, if you can get him in the 3rd, take him in a heartbeat. If he falls undrafted, that's crazy. You have to draft him. You have to go get him. I don't think he should fall undrafted. Moving into Dallas, a lot of people don't like this pick. Tight end Luke Schoonmaker, or Schoonmaker, however you want to pronounce it, or Schoonmaker. To me, he fills the role of Dalton Schultz. They drafted him in the 2nd, super high. I get they have 2 rookie tight ends from the prior year, but to be honest with you, Schoonmaker is the guy for this team, and they had no issues moving on from Dalton Schultz because they knew how the depth in this draft at tight end, and I think Schoonmaker can actually do everything on this team, and he is out of Michigan, so he knows how to play against good defenses. This guy, day 1 impact. If he's not drafted by the 3rd round, I'd go get him in the 3rd round if you need a tight end. And if you don't, stash him on your taxi squad. Just go put him on your taxi squad and just leave him there if you have him. Deuce Vaughn, they also drafted in the 6th. Don't touch this guy. To be honest with you, I get Dallas needs running backs. I don't like Deuce Vaughn, and I think he's going super high in some drafts. I want to say I saw Deuce Vaughn in the 1st round. I can't 100% remember. I don't like this guy. If you like him, that's great for you. Take the gamble on him. I get the opportunities there, but I think they're going back to the passing offense where they're hoping Dak can throw for 5,200 yards, and I think they're going to lean on the run in times of need. Outside of that, I don't think they're going to go much. Jalen Brooks, they drafted in the 7th round. He does have late opportunities in the season if somebody goes down injured, and I think he has the ability to make a roster spot. I don't think he's a usable piece this year, so he's a taxi squad guy. He probably will go undrafted in most leagues. Denver. Marvin Mims, this pick just threw me all off in the draft. They drafted him in the 2nd round, 32nd overall. No. 1st round. No, that's 2nd round, 32nd overall. That's weird. I think that's right. So, to be honest, they're obviously going to use him in Denver, but he's behind Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. I just don't see the opportunity here. I also don't know why they drafted him so high. They have tight ends. I don't get this pick. This is one of those picks I don't get. He will be a guy that is probably going to be a wide receiver 3, 4 on the depth chart. So I think you have to draft him, and I think you have to draft him somewhere in the mid-second round, early second, because just the target shares are going to be there. They're hoping Russell goes back to let Russell cook situation. So I think that was their first pick in the draft. So I think they saw something here that they wanted him to go out and play day one. I just think there is better talent in front of him that he's going to be a nice piece on this roster, and he will find ways to get open and make big scores from the start, moving on to later in the season. So I don't know. There's something about this pick that just kind of gets me not fuzzy inside, the opposite of fuzzy inside. Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs. We all know Jahmyr. He's going to be first round draft pick for anybody. Top 3, depending on what your needs were and what your team needs are. I think he's going 3 in our draft. I think most every other draft he's going 2nd overall. They didn't touch much. They have Antoine Green in the 7th. To be honest with you, Detroit is so stacked at wide receiver. Antoine Green might not even make a roster spot. This is a guy I probably wouldn't touch. That's all they drafted offensively. Like I said, I'm not going to touch defenses because we don't do IDP, and a lot of leagues don't do IDP. But if you do, like I said, I will talk about some of these guys who could be day one impact guys for your league. You just got to let me know what your settings are, because IDP is all over the place. There's just stats for everything. Green Bay Packers, like I was telling you earlier, they drafted 2 tight ends. Both these guys had the ability to step on the field day one and put up numbers. The issue is both these guys are the exact same guy. So flip a coin at who you want to take. They drafted Luke Musgrave over Tucker Kraft, but I think they both have almost the exact same ability. Then they drafted a wide receiver in the 2nd in Jaden Reed. This one kind of threw a lot of people off. But I will tell you, my sister looked at this draft pick, and she actually really liked his ability. I still, to this day, haven't looked at this kid. I don't know what he's capable of doing. I just know that they don't have the highest talent at wide receiver, and Jaden Reed probably will make a roster spot, and he'll have every opportunity in the world to try to show what he has on that field. But the other issue is Jordan Love's throwing him the ball, and unless Jordan Love comes out firing like he's a top 10 quarterback, I just don't see the target shares. I see them going through the running game this year, and then second option is to throw the ball, depending on situation. Then they drafted, like I said, I actually like Dontavian Wicks. They got him in the 5th. I think he has higher potential. And then they also drafted Lou Nichols, running back out of Central Michigan, in the 7th, and Grant Dubois in the 7th. Grant Dubois is not bad, but I will say quality and quantity, and we all know Green Bay went for quantity because I think they had, 14 picks in this draft? You got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 picks in this draft. So that team just tried to just shooting arrows and hope to God they hit a bullseye. So that's not how you shoot arrows, by the way. That's how you shoot arrows. So then you jump in, and you're in the Houston Texans. This is the first quarterback, in my mind, who's going to have a lot of potential, but he's not a running quarterback. He's a pocket passer, and I don't know if the weapons are as good as they should be around him, but they did go out and get Nathaniel Dell in the 3rd round in wide receiver, which his nickname is Tank Dell. A lot of people really love this kid's potential, but my issue with him is he's very small. I want to say he's 5'9", 5'8", 5'8", 165. And he doesn't pair up the same speed as Devontae Smith had coming in the league. So he is very, very small. And he's going up against corners that are 5'11", 6 foot, and they are probably 188 to 200. And that's coming out of college. That's not even the guys that have been in the NFL. So I think he's going to struggle a little bit. He's not the fastest guy on the field, but he is a very, very crisp route runner. So he's a guy that's going to have to catch the ball, and hopefully C.J. Stroud can hit him on his windows. If he can't hit him on his windows, it's going to be a rough season for those two. They also drafted Xavier Hutchinson, which I know a lot of guys on this show feel like Xavier Hutchinson in the 6th round is a steal in this draft. And mostly Xavier Hutchinson is probably going late 2nd, early 3rd. If he's undrafted, I say go get him. The guy's a big-bodied receiver. He is 6'2", 203. Probably a day one starter in my mind because there's not a lot of wide receivers on this team. If Xavier Hutchinson's there and you need a wide receiver, I would have zero issues with taking a guy like this. There are better receivers, but to be honest, most of them will probably be gone. And with the opportunities Xavier's going to get, I would say go after him. Moving on to the Colts. This team did everything across the board. Anthony Richardson at 1. This guy should be the first quarterback off your board in Dynasty. If he's not the first quarterback off your board, I'd be shocked because he's a running quarterback. You always take a running quarterback in Dynasty over a passing quarterback. It's just, or in most leagues, over a passing quarterback. Unless you're 6-point passing touchdowns, which would kind of change it a little bit. But I would say Anthony Richardson is probably the first quarterback off your board. And then they drafted in the 3rd round Josh Downs. Now they did lose, I'll always remember his name. Was it Pittman? They did lose Pittman. Yeah, I think they lost Pittman. His name escapes me. And they still have Alec Pierce and one other guy. These guys, I was talking about them all day today. But Josh Downs is probably the 3rd wide receiver on this offense, and he's going to be a day 1 starter. Now the question is who gets the targets there, because they do have other targets on this team. And keep in mind, Jonathan Taylor's on this team, and it is a running offense. So we'll see how many times they throw the ball. I think it's not going to be more than 450 times this year. So that really kind of dwindles it down to where those targets go. Jonathan Taylor, I think the year he was healthy, he got somehow 60 targets, 60 or 70 targets. So he's a huge passing guy in the check down. So I see that still continuing this year. I think he's coming back super healthy. If you could draft Jonathan Taylor in any draft, you obviously go get him. And anybody that's saying Jonathan Taylor's not a top 5, GFY. But that's all on this team. Their running back, Evan Hall, 5th round. I don't like this opportunity. Buried on a depth chart. Probably won't get the start this year. And they have other guys in front of him. So I don't like that situation there. Jacksonville did what they could in the offseason, and then they went and got Brenton Strange in the 2nd. I believe there's better tight ends, but Brenton Strange has high upside and day 1 starting potential. I still think they have Evan Ingram on that team. I think they re-signed him, or they got him on a franchise tag. Then you got Tank Bigsby in the 3rd. Now, this one I like. If he's not going in the 2nd round, I would be shocked. You should probably get Tank Bigsby. He's probably going to have the opportunity to split carries this year. I know a lot of people don't think so, but you'd be shocked what's going to happen here. And if he's undrafted, go get him. Just go get him. The other guys we got here, Parker Washington out of Penn State. I don't know too much about Parker Washington, but I know that they are fairly thin at receiver, that almost everybody has a chance to make this roster when it comes to wide receiver, and he could be a guy that's fighting for a roster. So this is a guy that might go undrafted that I would probably stick on my taxi squad if I could and see what happens. But again, I don't know too much about this guy. I'm going to have to look into it now that I just saw that they drafted him in the 6th. But they did have a lot. They had 3 6th and 3 7th round picks. So it's another team going for quantity over quality. And then we jump into Kansas City Chiefs. Rashee Rice, probably going to get an opportunity to start. I know a lot of people like Rashee Rice coming into this draft. He's probably I think there are some leagues getting him drafted in the late 1st, but he's probably an early 2nd, mid-2nd kind of guy. I just don't like anybody in Kansas City right now. They spread the ball. I think last year they had 12 receivers, including tight ends, with over 100 yards. So, that's a ridiculous number that many people on your team got the ball. So I just don't know. Obviously, a lot of upside. He's going with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So if you can get Rashee Rice, get him. Just don't go too high, because I'm getting Mecole Hardman vibes out of him. Like, he's going to have good years, but then I just don't see that potential in the future. Maybe draft him in the 2nd, have a great season out of him, and then trade him at a high level. I could see that happening. Sorry, a little parched. Chargers. This is a team that drafted a guy super high, and our entire panel hated him. Quentin Johnston. Now, the opportunity is here. Mike Williams, I don't know what the word is from his back surgery. So Mike Williams is going to probably have a rough start to the season. And they did sign him for an additional, I think, two more years on top of this upcoming year. So Quentin Johnston probably is a guy that's going to be drafted in the top 6, first round for you guys. But outside of that, I don't like it. They also drafted in the 4th round Darius Davis out of TCU. This one has a little bit of sneaky ability to kind of get in and get some target shares later in the season. So if you have some injuries, and to be honest, that Chargers team always has injuries, this guy has the potential to see some target shares later in the season. So I could see him on a taxi squad going undrafted. Nobody's going to probably draft this guy, but he can go undrafted, and I can see people snaking him up. Most people think Justin Herbert is obviously not going to go anywhere. The guy's a franchise guy. He's going to get paid next year. Dude's going to be formidable for years to come. But they did draft Max Duggan. I don't think you go get this guy, but there's always that chance that Justin Herbert does go down. So if you are a Justin Herbert owner and you just want that safety blanket for this year, just go put him on your taxi squad. Just because if he goes down, you're all good, and if he doesn't, you just toss him. So, man, this must be this headset. We've been having this issue constantly with this headset. The Rams. Rams. What is going to be happening with the Rams? Where is Stafford going? Is Stafford retiring in a year? What's going to happen here? Nobody knows. Is Cooper Kupp coming back healthy? I would hope so. I think Cooper Kupp has that potential to do what he did 2 years ago. I really do. We'll see what happens, though. They did draft a wide receiver by Puka Nacua in the 5th round, and then they drafted a running back who is a sleeper for me in this draft, and he is in the 6th round by Zach Evans. And this is a guy that we had touted high on our board, and he fell way down there. And the Rams don't have a lot of depth at running back. So I can see Zach Evans playing this year and possibly splitting carries, and he got drafted in the 6th round. So if he's not drafted in your league in the late 2nd, early 3rd, I think you would be smart to take a flyer on. That's just me to be. Wow, that's weird. That's just me to be honest with you. So I don't know how much more you want me to say there. Dude has the ability to be a starter on most rosters if they would have drafted him. God, that is annoying me. All right, maybe that'll make it a little better. Put it. Doing it. Oh, it's doing it worse. Sorry, guys. All right, maybe that'll help. There's just something wrong with that headset. I think that's it on this team. Like I said, Zach Evans is a guy that's a sleeper in this draft. I would probably target him. Then we go into the Raiders, the wonderful Raiders, the convicts of the league. And Henry Ruggs is still in jail, or going to jail. Just giving you that heads up. They drafted Michael Mayer in the 2nd round. This is probably the 2nd tight end that'll come off the board. Some leagues the 1st because he is like I said, like a Jason Witten. And if Jimmy Garoppolo can check down to a guy like this, there is high potential for points per reception, and he could be a top 10 tight end in this league because of the target shares. And then they also drafted Trey Tucker out of Cincinnati in the 3rd round. Good pick. Possibility of being a day one starter. I can see him battling for that roster spot with Hunter Renfrow and Jacoby Myers to try to get on that field. But I will tell you, both those guys in my mind have way higher upside, so he will be a 4th guy on the depth chart. So I would be willing to put that guy on my taxi squad if he goes undrafted. And that's just giving you guys a heads up. There is a lot of weapons in this league last few years. So a lot of these guys are coming in and they're hoping for their opportunity to start. And I think a lot of these guys have the potential, especially because the guys in front of them aren't studs, but they've been proven to do well at what they've been doing, so people aren't ready to check out on them yet. And one of the teams that I'm going to get to a little later, like the Tennessee Titans, anybody could go and start on this team at wide receiver. So it's going to be a struggle there. That's all they drafted offensively for the Raiders, which, I mean, honestly, they have Devontae Adams. They still have Josh Jacobs. They've got good. They got Zamir White as a running back behind Josh Jacobs. Like I said, they still have Hunter Renfrow. So they have a pretty deep offensive talent. So I don't think they needed too much. Then Miami only had 4 picks this year. And to be honest, they suck in general. They drafted in the 3rd round Devin Achane, who I think is the smallest, fastest kid in the draft. 5'9", 188, but super fast. So I don't know. I guess there's high upside. I think he's getting drafted in the 1st round by a lot of teams. But I'm pretty sure they still have Jeff Wilson there. And they brought back every single running back, if I remember correctly. So, and then they drafted Elijah Higgins out of Stanford. Again, I felt there was better receivers in this situation, but Miami is so deep at receiver that Elijah is a 4th, 5th guy that might see a roster spot. Good guy to stash in your taxi squad if you have the ability to. But there's a lot of other opportunities that I like for a lot of these other guys. Moving into Minnesota, I talked to you about him a little earlier. Jordan Addison, he's going to get drafted in the top 6 of your draft. I wouldn't be shocked if he could be the best wide receiver coming out of this draft. Now, the problem is he has Justin Jefferson ahead of him, so he's going to miss about 150 targets, and he's going to have to try to scoop up another 120 targets with KJ Osborne right behind him. So, and TJ Hockenson and Dalvin Cook. So, like, there's just so much on this team that there's not a lot of opportunity. And like I told you, Dwayne McBride, this is a guy that I love his upside, but he's buried a little bit on the depth chart. But if he starts, he has the ability to be a very good fill-in running back. I just don't know if I take the risk because he's behind Dalvin Cook. Now, Dalvin Cook has the potential to get injured. He does a lot now, but he's been healthy for the last 2-3 years. So that's my fear, is that he's going to continue to be healthy, because in order for this team to make a playoff run, they need Dalvin Cook. So I would take Dwayne McBride as a UDFA, but I don't know if I would draft him at all in the 3rd round. Maybe as the last pick in the draft, but outside of that, that's maybe if you need somebody. Moving into the New England Patriots, again, another team that goes for quantity over quality. So they also drafted a wide receiver in Kayshon Boutte, or Boutte, however you want to say it. Ryan, love this guy on the show. A lot of these guys here love this guy. I think I had him as like a top 12 as a wide receiver. Great wide receiver. The problem is not a lot of receivers in fantasy shine on this team, but Kayshon, I think, has that ability. There's not too much in front of him, so I think he has that ability. They also drafted Demario Douglas out of Liberty. This is a flyer pick for them because they love to draft guys out of smaller schools. Wouldn't be shocked if he actually could start day 1. And then you go into the Saints. This team, I mean, I love everything about this team. I think in their division, they're probably going to win their division this year. You got Derek Carr throwing the ball, and then they go draft Kendrick Miller just in case Alvin Kamara gets suspended. Kendrick Miller is probably a day 1 starter, especially if Alvin Kamara gets suspended. Then they draft A.T. Perry in the 6th round out of Wake Forest. A.T. Perry has the ability to step up and fill some shoes. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, not Cortland Sutton, Marquise Colston. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Marquise Colston. Does he have that potential? I don't think so, but I think when you talk about his build and everything, I think he kind of reminds me of him. So Michael Thomas, A.T. Perry, Chris Olave, I actually like that stack, and A.T. Perry could shine on that offense. That's a guy I would draft somewhere in the 3rd round if he's there. I might even take a risk late 2nd. That's just me. I'm willing to take risks on some of these guys. So moving to the Giants. I know I got like 7, 8 teams left. Giants, you got wide receiver Jalen Hyatt. Again, this team has just got 35 wide receivers on their depth chart. Jalen Hyatt, maybe because they drafted him high in the 3rd, you got to kind of go out, get him in your 3rd round, stash him on your taxi squad if he gets a start, or if he wins a starting job over people like Wan'Dale Robinson and something like that. Maybe you start him. They also drafted Eric Gray, who could be a sleeper kind of guy. If Saquon does go down, Eric Gray probably will start. And if you have Saquon, he might be a good handcuff for you, just so you don't lose that starting running back on that team. Then going into the New York Jets. This is killing me. Then going into the New York Jets, you have Israel Abanikanda. I love this Jets team, obviously, and then drafting Abanikanda on the 5th. It's the only offensive player they saw worth drafting. So I think that's a huge benefit to Abanikanda. That I think that what that's saying is that they want to start this guy. Apparently, I'm just going to have technical difficulties today because that is crazy. I think I still heard that noise. But yeah, I see a lot going on here. Oh my gosh. With Abanikanda. That is so. That's it. That's it. That's it. Sorry, we're going to fix this right now. I apologize, guys. All right, can you hear me? Yeah, so I see Abanikanda being a huge day one impact possibly on this team and possibly getting some target shares. So I don't know. Can you guys, I hope you guys can hear me. If you're watching, I hope you can hear me. I'm not 100% sure. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear? Okay. Sorry, guys. That is a risk that I had to adjust everything because for some reason nothing wants to work right for me today. Granted, it is just me, so that could be the reason why. I am the front. I am the back. I am the show. But yeah, Abanikanda, this is a guy that we love coming out of this draft, and he is going to have the opportunity, I think, later in the year. But they do have a very deep depth chart when it comes to wide receivers. So, Philadelphia Eagles, this team is stacked all around, and then they went out and got DeAndre Swift. So, I'm not sure what to do, what goes on this team, but they just seem to get pieces no matter everywhere they go. So, DeAndre Swift is a huge addition. And then they draft Tanner McKee late in the 6th as a quarterback. I don't think you need to draft him. I don't even think he'll ever get a start. Jalen Hurts is fairly healthy. He did have that one issue last year, but I think that was a fluke. The Steelers, this team didn't even touch, actually, any offensive players. So we can just skip right over that one, right? I mean, no offensive players coming out of this team. And then you have the Seattle Seahawks. This one's kind of confusing for a lot of people, right? Because they still have Kenneth Walker, who they drafted last year. And then they go and get in the 2nd round. And that's pretty high for a guy to draft, especially when I think you drafted Kenneth Walker right in the same area, and Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is probably going to be the 2nd to 3rd receiver coming off this board, or 3rd running back coming off this board for your dynasty. But the only issue with this that I see, and maybe it's just because I'm high on Kenneth Walker, so I'm a Kenneth Walker owner, but I think Charbonnet ends up splitting the carries. This is supposed to be what Rashard Penny and Kenneth Walker were going to be, and this team likes to split carries 50-50. So I think both guys will get a bunch of touches. I just think Charbonnet might have the ability to excel in the touchdown side of things, and Kenneth Walker will be the rest of the field, which hurts me immensely because I'm a huge Kenneth Walker fan, and I think that he had such high upside. And then they went and drafted Kenny McIntosh in the 7th round, another guy who's a good guy but a good depth piece. He also, if you look at this Seattle offense last year, Seattle went out and they had obviously Kenneth Walker, then they had Rashard Penny, they had DJ Dallas, and they had Travis Homer. So they actually had 4 guys on their roster at running back, and now they lost Travis Homer. they have DJ Dallas still, and they lost Rashard Penny. So I think what they did is they just filled the roster spots with Charbonnet, obviously high upside, and that might have just been their best player on the board there because it was their 4th pick. And then on top of that, you go get McIntosh, who was another guy who has this draft was so deep at running back that a lot of these guys are just gonna get stashed on teams because that's what they want to do, is hide some of these players just in case one of their guys goes down, especially at running back because there's so many issues with injury. I think Ryan was reading me a stat the other day, like 36% of running backs get injured every year, and that is a ridiculous stat. Moving on to the 49ers, they drafted Cameron Latu out of Alabama. This, to me, what this says to me is if you are a Kittle owner, you should be extremely ecstatic about this because Cameron Latu is their blocker. So now you have Cameron Latu to help out on that offensive line, and George Kittle should have that ability to shine the way he did the year prior at wide receiver, essentially, like a very big slot receiver. So that is great for all you George Kittle owners. I hate it, not a George Kittle owner. But I don't see Latu being anything on the side of a PPR guy. Same with the Darnell Washington. I missed that earlier. That's funny. With the Steelers. How did I miss that? They drafted Darnell Washington in the 3rd also. And that's another guy who I just see when you have Patrick Freiermuth on that team. Why would you not throw the ball to him? He's actually a very good tight end. And actually, he was the 2nd best tight end in the Kyle Pitts draft. And Kyle Pitts was supposed to be a generational talent. So that should say a lot. He would have been the 1st if Kyle Pitts wasn't in that draft. And I really believe Kyle Pitts is just a slot receiver. I don't think he's a tight end. Which, if you actually look at a lot of these tight ends coming out this year, a lot of them are slot receivers. They're just really big slot receivers. They're too fat and slow to be a slot, but they're too small. I don't know. They're too big to be a slot and too slow to be a slot. So they get positioned at tight end and then they just play slot. Which, why not just sell them as a slot receiver at this point? I mean, we just changed the way the slot works. The slot's just a big possession guy now. And then your X and Y is your small, fast guys at this point. And then they're going to adjust the offenses and defenses, and they're going to get bigger corners. It's all going to change again. So in about 5-6 years, I wouldn't be shocked if your slots turn small like Julian Edelman's, and then your outside guys turn into like DK Metcalfs across the board. I wouldn't be shocked at all. So who else did they draft? They drafted Ronnie Bell out of Michigan in the 7th round. I actually kind of like this guy, and I think on this offense, he has the ability to sneak on the depth chart, and he could be a guy that actually will end up on your you should probably get him on your taxi squad because I think he has a potential to get some targets early on in the season. Now, the only issue is you got Sam Darnold, Trey Lance throwing the ball right now, especially if Brock Purdy doesn't come back this year. And a lot of people think Brock Purdy is the guy. I just think that offense is set up to just let any quarterback run wild. So I kind of like Sam Darnold there this year. I actually picked him up when one of our players dropped him. I'm a little kid, and I think Sam Darnold will eventually succeed. Eventually. He's only like 26 years old. So moving into Tampa Bay. This one's fun because actually Tampa Bay picked up just recently as a UDFA. I want to say it's not Zach Miller. Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker, who I think we had ranked in the top 15. Now, I know he has some heart issues from what I was hearing in the offseason, but they just signed him as a UDFA. So that's a guy that if you're not paying attention, he didn't get drafted, but he's probably going to be a day one starter splitting carries with Rachaad White. So you might take a look at that one. They also drafted Trey Palmer. This is another guy I think we had on our board out of Nebraska in the 6th round. This year, something weird this year happened where all of these teams, you had the few teams that took their wide receivers high and around the 2nd round, which I think are the teams that like want to have a wide receiver. And then everybody else was snaking receivers in the 5th and 6th round. Like not a lot went between the late 2nd and like 4th. So it was kind of weird to me, like because Trey Palmer probably should have been a 4th, 5th round guy. He got drafted in the 6th. So that one kind of throws me a curveball. So I think if you can get Trey Palmer in the late 3rd or UDFA, I'd be ecstatic if I were you. But he is in Tampa Bay. We don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation there. It's Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask. They didn't even draft a quarterback, so I think they're just sold on either of those two guys. Now, I was talking to you guys a little bit earlier about the Tennessee Titans, where just about anybody could start on this offense. And most people would probably agree with me. But I will say the Tennessee Titans did draft a guy by the name of Tyjae Spears. And I think if Derrick Henry goes down this year, this guy is going to be a freaking stud. So if you can get Tyjae Spears in the second round, draft him. I get he's not going to get touches right away, but this guy is going to be a stud in the NFL. If he didn't have issues with his body, he could be better than Bijan. And I know that sounds crazy, but this dude cuts at full speed. It's the most ridiculous thing to watch. If you watch the combine, he didn't slow down a bit. It was disgusting. Now, he could have issues with hitting the hole, which might be part of the issue. But if you get this dude in open field, he is a ridiculous guy. One cut, he's going to cut up anybody coming at him in the open field. I love this kid in this draft. Will Levis, he might end up winning a starting job. It's over Tannehill. It's not saying a lot, but they did trade up to get Will Levis at the second round. So I wouldn't be shocked if they did go and start Will Levis come mid-season. I just don't know if he's a day one starter. So I will say if you're a Tannehill owner, you should probably go out and get this guy. And he has high upside. So, I mean, if you draft him in the third round, I just stash him because he does have high upside. He's capable of running. They also drafted Josh Wiley. I know I want to say me and Steve on the show really kind of like this guy coming out of the draft. Kind of underrated, very athletic. He is a slot receiver that's just big. He's a big slot receiver. And on this team, he actually might win some target shares. So I think they might end up running a 2 tight end set on this team with 2 wide receivers. And those 2 wide receivers are Treylon Burks and Westbrook Akine. So pay attention to that because there's not a lot going on there. And you know what's funny is they didn't even address wide receiver in the draft. So that tells you wait, they did. Colton Dowell in the 7th out of UT Martin. I don't know, maybe touch that guy. And I don't know. Tennessee is, ever since they traded AJ Brown and dropped Corey Davis, they haven't had a receiver. So, and that's been 3 years now. I just don't like it. And then last but not least, the worst team in the NFL, because they refused to go get a quarterback, and that is the Washington Commanders. I mean, I don't even know who's starting there at this point. I really don't, actually. Come to think about it, I have zero ideas who's starting there. And I don't know if it's just escaping my mind. Is Carson Wentz going back there? I don't remember. Dude, that's crazy. Anyways, I'll get to that in another show, I guess, because that was supposed to be one of the topics I was going to talk about today was that division. Now, they didn't draft any wide receivers, but they did draft a running back by Chris Rodriguez out of Kentucky. Not a lot of people stood out in Kentucky. That running back had some decent yardage, had an okay year, but nothing really kind of crazy standoutish. So, that being said, I don't even know if I'd touch him because there's plenty of good running backs on that team that he's going to be buried on a depth chart, and nobody else really was there. So, that's really all I got to say. Any of you guys have any questions, that'd be great. I hope you guys took some input from this. There's going to be a lot of sleepers in this draft this year, and I know a lot of people are like, it's an okay draft. Tight end and running back depth is there. It is there. And if you don't understand that, you need to go back and watch some of the film. This was a very deep running back tight end draft. The problem is there are so many good running backs in the league right now. Not a lot of people need a running back, but with the protests that the owners are doing with running backs, there's a chance like guys that like Austin Eckler hold out and they just go, see ya. We'll go get a guy. We don't care. We do not care. So I think the owners have had it. They can put a good product on the field with guys that start day one. You might not like it. They might be better guys just sitting out there in free agency, but they're just done. I think they've had it, and I think they're protesting paying some of these guys. So I wouldn't be shocked to see even some receivers who want money this upcoming year just disappear. And then they just go draft again, especially with guys like Marvin Harrison coming in the next draft. So that being said, that is it for the show today. Anybody that stayed here and watched, I really do appreciate it. I am putting a lot of time and energy into this, and I know the guys are, like I said, They put a lot of time and energy into this, and they're a little burnt out. It's not easy for everybody. It is a lot of information, a lot of research out there. But I'm going to try to do my best. I'm going to do better every day. I will try to have a show for you Saturday. I'm going to do some more power rankings. If you guys have a conversation that you want to have about your Dynasty draft, please bring up that question. I know a lot of you guys aren't out there right now, but it's okay. I talk to myself all the time, and I'm okay with it. But if you are out there, please like, subscribe, come back to the chat. Tell me what I got to do. Tell me if you need me to put balloons up in the background. I can chase Pokemon on camera. I don't know. I can find something to do. Just giving you guys that heads up. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope everything out there is happy, and I will see you guys this Saturday.